WFYI podcasts are made possible by Bloomington, Indiana, an American college town offering experiences like indulging in grub at Nick's English Hut, taking a stroll along Kirkwood Avenue, feeling the history and magic of Assembly Hall, and providing the chance to feel like a college kid again. Plan your trip at visitbloomington.com.
I'm Kyle Long, host of Cultural Manifesto, just one of the local music programs you can enjoy on WFYI. These programs would not be possible without your financial support. And to say thank you, we want to send you to see Lyle Lovett when he comes to Indianapolis on July 28th. Choose a concert ticket as your gift when you donate at wfyi.org/give. And thanks for supporting WFYI.
This is WFYI News Now. It's June 7th, and I'm Abriana Herron. On today's show, the Southern Baptist Convention coming to Indianapolis will vote on a proposed constitutional ban on churches with women pastors. And new diplomas for Indiana's high school students are still under revision. Dozens of teachers brought concerns to a meeting this week.
But it's evolution with the foot on the gas pedal, because the urgency exists in the faces of our children who are going to leave our high school and enter a world that is fundamentally different than the world in which we entered.
Those stories coming up, but first, the new installment of our regular segment called The Checkup from Side Effects Public Media, where the health reporting team explores a single question sparked by a recent news story or maybe by one of our listeners.
You may have heard the news that the number of overdose deaths in the U.S. has dropped, according to provisional data from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. But the problem isn't going away. In fact, teenagers are still dying of overdoses. Here's the most striking finding of this data. The majority of these adolescent overdose deaths are happening in the home. So, the Checkup's question for today is, what do parents and young people need to know to prevent an overdose death? I'm Lizzie McGreevy, Community Engagement Specialist at Side Effects Public Media, and with me is Managing Editor Farah Yusri.
Hi, Lizzie.
Hi, Farah. So this is truly striking data. To start us off, can you tell us what we know about young people and overdoses?
Yeah, like you mentioned earlier, Lizzie, the number of young people who died of an overdose has more than doubled in 2022 compared to 2019. And that's looking at adolescents between 10 years old and 19 years old.
Wow, Farah, that's so young.
Yeah, and as parents, we are typically most worried when our teenage children are out partying or doing some other teenage activities with friends away from us. But what the CDC data tells us is that actually most of these overdose deaths are happening right under our noses, at home. Listen to what Dr. Lauren Tanz told me. She's a researcher with the CDC.
A quarter of deaths among adolescents had evidence of counterfeit pill use, and counterfeit pills are kind of easily marketed towards adolescents via social media. And I think they're easier for initiating drug use. And these counterfeit pills, they might look like legitimate pharmaceutical medications, but often they contain fentanyl. Most of the deaths occur at home where the decedent lives, and about 2/3 had somebody nearby that could have potentially intervened to prevent the overdose.
Farah, we know that we have tools to reverse overdoses, and that can save lives. Why aren't we employing these tools?
So according to the data, family or friends in the house may be spatially separated from the teenager, as in parents may be in the living room and the child is in their own room. So they do not see what's happening. Other times, maybe they didn't even know that their adolescent uses drugs. And so they didn't know that they should administer naloxone. And other times, people just didn't have the tools like naloxone at home, or they just didn't know how to use it. But Lizzie, Dr. Tanz also says that in nearly a third of the adolescent overdose deaths, naloxone was actually used, but it didn't save the person. She says in these instances, maybe the naloxone dose used wasn't enough, or in some instances, there may have been polydrugs involved. Here's how she explains what that means.
Polydrugs mean there were more than one drug or drug type involved in an overdose, so something like an opioid and a stimulant. Naloxone can only reverse an opioid overdose. That said, over 90% of adolescent overdose deaths involved an opioid. So it is always important to administer naloxone if somebody is overdosing.
So, what should families know or do to prevent a tragedy like this from happening?
So first off, stocking up on naloxone is a great idea. Then learning how to use it is crucial. There are, a lot of educational videos on the CDC website if you just look up the word naloxone on their website. And what really prevents kids from starting to use drugs is building a strong social network around them. So if, for example, they are close to their family, they have activities that they do at school, all of this involvement helps children and prevents substance use. Finally, if the parent knows that their child uses drugs, it's important to first make sure they are doing it safely, and second, to seek effective treatment as soon as possible.
Okay, Farah. So say there's a parent or caregiver who's concerned that their child might be using drugs. Are there certain signs or symptoms to look out for that could indicate drug use?
Yeah, a change in behavior or mood, disappearing for a long period of time, locked doors, being secretive, inability to focus, among other things. Experts also say a history of mental illness is another risk factor for drug use. So, as a parent, if you have doubts, experts advise you shouldn't be afraid to err on the side of caution. So, if you have doubts, prepare to ask tough questions like, have you been vaping or using drugs? Of course, as parents, we really don't want to hear the word yes, but parents should be prepared to respond in a way that does not alienate the child if, in fact, they are using drugs, and to be prepared to help them.
Farah, thank you so much for this very important information and shedding some light on this with us today. If you have any other questions about opioid use or substance use or mental health or anything else health related, please let us know and we can try to answer that next time on The Checkup. Stay safe.
That was The Checkup, a segment from Side Effects Public Media. Side Effects is a regional health reporting collaboration of NPR member stations across the Midwest, based here at WFYI. The Southern Baptist Convention is preparing to vote on a proposed constitutional ban on churches with women pastors. Drew Daudelin brings us this report.
The vote will take place in Indianapolis at the annual meeting of the nation's largest Protestant denomination from June 11th to the 12th. The denomination's statement of faith says the office of pastor is reserved for men, but that statement is non-binding. By some estimates, the proposal could affect hundreds of churches with women as either lead or associate pastors. The denomination can't tell its independent churches what to do, but it can boot them out. Even without a formal ban last year, it ousted one of its largest congregations, Saddleback Church of California, for having women pastors. I'm Drew Daudelin.
And for our final story today, new diplomas for Indiana's high school students are still under revision, but dozens of teachers brought concerns to the State Board of Education meeting on Wednesday. Educators say they want a delay of the rollout and to keep academic honors as a diploma option. State leaders shared a new compromise to their diploma plan. They offered seals on diplomas to reflect a student's path, such as enrollment in college, employment, or enlistment. Ron Sandlin is the Senior Director of School Performance and Transformation for the Education Department. Sandlin says changes to the diplomas are needed.
But it's evolution with the foot on the gas pedal, because the urgency exists in the faces of our children who are going to leave our high school and enter a world that is fundamentally different than the world in which we entered.
Secretary of Education Katie Jenner said the ink is not dry on this plan. The department will discuss diploma revisions next month and bring a revised draft of the diplomas to the state board by September. The board is required by state law to adopt new requirements by the end of the year. That's all for today's episode of WFYI News Now. Our podcast is produced by the following people who live in your community: Drew Daudelin, Kendall Antron, who composed the music for this podcast, and me, Abriana Herron. Our news director is Sarah Neal-Estes. If you like today's episode, remember to subscribe and share, and follow WFYI on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube to check in on our newsroom throughout the day. Thanks for listening. We'll be back on Monday.
WFYI podcasts are made possible by Bloomington, Indiana, an American college town offering experiences like indulging in grub at Nick's English Hut, taking a stroll along Kirkwood Avenue, feeling the history and magic of Assembly Hall, and providing the chance to feel like a college kid again. Plan your trip at visitbloomington.com.